The evasive nature of UFOs. Is this benevolent behavior? They do this to avoid our craft. The world's leading UFO researchers will all tell you the same thing. The vast majority of UFO encounters with human aircraft, be it civilian or military, perform evasive maneuvers to avoid our own craft. This has been what's reported for decades, and that's made clear by going through the literature that describes military and civilian encounters with UFOs. Regardless of this, much of the sentiment in mainstream media right now still points to UFOs being a threat to national security. A statement by General Nathan Twining, the former Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force, reads as follows. The phenomenon reported is something real and not visionary or fictitious. The reported operating characteristics such as extreme rate of climb, maneuverability, particularly in roll, and actions which must be considered evasive when sighted or contacted by friendly aircraft and radar, lend belief to the possibility that some of the objects are controlled either manually, automatically, or remotely, end quote. So why, if they are performing evasive maneuvers, have multiple governments tried to take down these crafts? At a 2008 conference in Toronto, Canada, former Canadian Defence Minister Paul Hellyer emphasized that the protocol for military pilots when encountering a UFO was shoot first and ask questions later. Colonel Ross Diedrichson, U.S. Air Force colonel, who had an 8-year stint with the Atomic Energy Commission, said his belief and inside knowledge that these objects were piloted by non-humans and that our response to their appearance in our atmosphere was aggressive, quote unquote. David Clark, investigative journalist, reader, and lecturer at Sheffield Hallam University, who was also the curator for the National Archives UFO project from 2008 to 2013, came across some interesting documents suggesting that the UK was desperate to capture a UFO for UFO technology. Eric W. Davis, renowned astrophysicist who worked with the Pentagon UFO program, said that he gave a classified briefing to the Defense Department agency as recently as March 2020, and he talked about retrievals from off-world vehicles not made on this earth, quote unquote. Off-world vehicles not made on this earth. Would these desires explain our aggressive behavior? There have been thousands of encounters exemplifying these evasive maneuvers. For example, in 1976, residents of Tehran, Iran, noticed a big bright object in the sky. The airport traffic controller also noticed. Military jets were scrambled and a game of cat and mouse ensued in the air. Both of the F-4 interceptor pilots reported seeing the object visually. It was also tracked on their airborne radar, and both planes had their critical instrumentation and electronic systems go offline at a distance of 25 miles from the object, including when they attempted to fire upon the object. So their systems went offline. You can read more about that in the link here. Now, the evasive characteristics of these objects had renowned UFO researcher and scientist Dr. Jack Vallée state the following, and he stated this on the Joe Rogan show, quote, "We have to stop reacting to intrusions by UFOs as a threat. This should not be looked at as a threat. We're the phenomenon that we observe. If they wanted to blow up those F-18s, they would do it. Obviously, that's not what it's all about. And this idea of just labeling it as a threat because it's unknown, that's the wrong idea," he said, end quote. Now, can we make the assumption that this is benevolent behavior? It's hard to say. Who are they and where do they come from? What do they want here? That's the question. It's intimidating. So anything that's bringing us fear, intimidation, is not of God, we know. Now, if you go beyond simple UFO cases and move into supposed contact stories, where individuals have claimed to have contact with and or communicate with the supposed beings operating these unknown craft, you find that stories of these beings being concerned about the direction of humanity is going also, it also seems to be dominant theme. The aerial school encounter took place in Zimbabwe in 1994. It's one of the many great examples Over 60 school children all witnessed beings emerge from a craft that landed near the school. They were heavily studied and all shared very similar stories as one another. Generally, the children were told by these beings that humanity is not taking care of the planet properly and that if we don't change, things will get very bad. Of course, the children were frightened out of their skin. Now, that being said, there are also malevolent or seemingly malevolent contact type of stories out there. That's a different and much deeper discussion, as these generally break into stories that might involve perceived threat versus real threat, as well as other key distinctions. At the end of the day, our aggressive response to the behavior of these objects, including shooting them down, does not seem like a necessary response. If these objects have been around for several decades and have not demonstrated any clear malevolent behavior, why do we respond in that manner? Well, they have been malevolent. What about the Russian soldiers that were turned into stone by the UFOs striking them with certain laser rays? Okay? Now, is our response and behavior towards these objects indicative of the level of consciousness humanity currently operates at? There were one where we fear that we don't understand, and instead of being curious, we simply attack them. If you were an intelligent being from somewhere else observing our planet, the way we treated each other, animals, and more, what would you think? Again, if you're that advanced, tell us who you are. What are you afraid of? What do you want to hide? Why are you hiding? Why are you playing cat and mouse and intimidating humans? Now, the reason it's so important for us to examine this topic more closely is that secrecy has plagued the UFO stories for decades. The more we continue to rely on big government for answers, the more we seem to be deceived, drifting further from the truth, perhaps out of militaristic mindset or perhaps for some other reason. And this is from Evasive Nature UFOs. Is this benevolent behavior? Originally published on The Pulse. It's here under Creative Commons by Arjun Walia on Collective Spark. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.